Ever get that feeling like there's a right way to do things, a right way to act,
Yeah.
and you're just trying to figure out what it is?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what we're going to be diving into today.
Okay.
The Diplomat.
Oh, interesting.
And to get ready for this one, let me tell you,
Yeah.
I had to dive into a stack of books and articles to really wrap my head around this one.
I bet. Yeah.
Buckle up.
It's a fascinating one.
Yeah.
You're right about that feeling of like almost like there's a map, like
Yeah.
a map of how to be. And we're all just trying to figure out how to follow it, especially, when we're younger, when we're first stepping out into the world and trying to find our place.
Yeah. So are we talking about like a developmental stage here?
Yeah.
Like everybody goes through this diplomat phase.
Yeah, you could think of it like that. I mean, not everybody, but it's definitely a very common, I think, experience, that period where fitting in and following the rules and upholding traditions feels really, really important.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's less about being a certain type of person and more about a stage we all kind of navigate.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because, we always hear like, be yourself, embrace your individuality.
Right.
And it seems like what you're saying is this diplomat stage is saying like there's power in conformity too.
There is, yeah. It's not always a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, think about, I don't know if you've ever seen like those big groups of Tai Chi practitioners like in, say, the opening ceremonies of the Olympics or something.
Right.
Right.
There's a real beauty to that.
Yeah.
Synchronicity. And the diplomat really connects to that. They find meaning in being a part of something bigger than themselves.
Yeah, like that energy you get at a sporting event or something like that. Everyone's united.
It's that collective energy. And it's not just, something superficial like a sporting event. It's like, it's the fabric of society.
Right.
I mean, think about like the Mormon pioneers, for example, their ability to survive and thrive in these incredibly harsh conditions.
Right.
It came from that shared purpose,
Yeah.
that faith in their community.
Right.
That's the diplomat in action. It's harnessing that collective strength to achieve what individuals never could alone.
So incredible resilience.
Sense of purpose. I mean,
Absolutely.
there's a lot of strengths
Yeah.
that come with this stage. It reminds me of that story in the text we were reading about, a neighbor helping to move a couch in the middle of winter.
Yeah.
Which is something that no one would do by themselves.
Exactly.
But for the good of the group, people are willing to go above and beyond.
Yeah. There's a real willingness to serve there.
Yeah. And it's inspiring in a way,
It is. It's very human.
Yeah.
It speaks to that deep need for connection that we all have.
Right.
But like anything, there's,
Right.
there's two sides to every coin.
Right.
And when the group's ideals or actions maybe don't align with your own internal compass, your own moral compass, that's where the diplomat can really struggle.
Yeah, because their sense of self is so tied to the identity of the group.
Exactly.
That to question the group is almost to question themselves.
Right, exactly.
And their own values. And so the text talked about how difficult it is for people in this stage to challenge norms even when they're faced with injustice.
Yeah.
So imagine being...
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
It's tough.
In Selma, Alabama in 1965 during the Civil Rights Movement, right?
Right.
Surrounded by people that are fighting for equality. The diplomat, who is wired for conformity, would really struggle in that situation.
Absolutely, yeah. They'd be torn. And without that strong internal compass, they can get really swept up in mob mentality.
Right.
Think about those historical examples we have of mass hysteria or groupthink, that's the diplomat without those critical thinking skills to really challenge what's going on around them.
Yeah, and it's that that us versus them dynamic too.
Yes,
right?
very much so.
The text talked about how challenging it can be for people in this stage to relate to anyone outside of their immediate group.
Yeah, it's like the world becomes very black and white.
Right.
You're either with us or against us kind of thinking.
Right.
And it makes it very difficult to see the nuance, right?
Right.
And to see the humanity in those who are different.
Yeah.
Yeah. The world of the diplomat is really all about fitting in.
Right.
Belonging, and sometimes that comes at the expense of being able to hold those two things at the same time.
Right, and that's such a key part of this stage is it's all about right and wrong as defined by
exactly
the group.
And it makes it hard to see the gray areas.
Right.
It makes it hard to see.
Yeah, it's very black and white.
The complexity.
Right.
Yeah, and it makes me think about
Yeah.
that quote from Martin Luther King Jr.'s speech about, judging people not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
Right.
And I think he was really speaking directly to that diplomat tendency to focus on these external factors rather than really engaging with the complexity of the individual.
Right.
What's really inside.
Right. And it's not just about, like, other people. Right. It's also about the diplomat's own internal struggles. The text mentioned how intense it can be for people in this stage.
Yeah.
If their own desires clash with the group's ideals.
Right.
And they're constantly having to wrestle with that.
Because it's like you're constantly trying to measure up to this external standard.
Right.
And you never quite feel good enough.
It's a lot of pressure.
It is.
That is what constantly be under.
You're always trying to fit in and belong, but at the same time, you're also trying to, be true to yourself.
Right. And it's like those two things are constantly butting heads.
Totally. And that's where that inner conflict comes in. The text talked about how a lot of religious traditions emphasize, mastering physical appetites. And it's like, for the diplomat, every impulse, every desire becomes this test of loyalty and self-control.
Right.
Like, can I control myself? Can I be a good person according to these rules?
Right. And it's interesting. We've talked a lot about rules and authority. Like, how does that...
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, how does that play out when it comes to the diplomat's relationship with knowledge and learning?
Right. So for the diplomat, it's not about rocking the boat or questioning everything.
Right.
It's about finding comfort in the known.
Right. Yeah.
In the established. So when it comes to learning, they're less interested in, critical analysis and more interested in memorization.
Right.
Reinforcement of those existing structures.
Interesting. So it's about accepting knowledge from authority figures.
Yes, very much so.
And upholding the existing order, in a way that's valuable. Right.
Absolutely, because it provides stability, continuity.
To society.
Think about all the amazing things that diplomat cultures have achieved throughout history. I mean, the building of grand cathedrals, these intricate systems of ancient civilizations. These were all collective endeavors that relied on this shared sense of purpose.
Yeah, it's like that saying, there's strength in numbers.
Exactly.
Or in this case.
Yep. Strength in a shared purpose and following a blueprint. But how do we balance that with the need for progress and questioning the status quo?
That's the million-dollar question, right? Because we need both. We need that stability, that continuity. But we also need that dynamism and that ability to challenge the status quo.
It seems like it's not about getting rid of one or the other. It's about finding a way to have both.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance.
Right.
And the text suggests that it's not about discarding the diplomat stage entirely.
Right.
It's about integrating its gifts, the sense of belonging, the willingness to serve, the respect for tradition, but also integrating those with the critical thinking.
And the individual expression that come with later stages of development.
Because even though we celebrate, individuality and independence, we still are.
We're social creatures.
Wired for connection.
Yes.
We see that from the time we're little.
Absolutely.
Mimicking our parents.
Yeah, it's fun
to finding our tribe as teenagers.
Totally. Yeah. To, even joining social movements as adults.
Right. It's all about
belonging.
Being a part of something larger than ourselves.
And I think that's what the diplomat stage is really all about.
Right.
It's about tapping into that fundamental human need.
And like you said before, every strength has its shadow.
Absolutely.
And this is no different.
It's about recognizing both.
Right.
Right. Gifts in the shadows.
Yeah.
And finding a way to integrate those into a more, holistic and nuanced understanding of the world.
The world and our place in it.
Exactly.
So we've gone deep on the diplomat, right?
Yeah.
Seen how they can move mountains.
Absolutely.
Build communities, keep traditions alive.
It's powerful stuff.
But we've also seen how that same drive can lead them astray.
Right. Right down the rabbit hole sometimes.
Blind obedience, that us and them thinking.
Yeah, it's like anything else. Strengths have their shadows,
Yeah, and it's almost like with this diplomat stage, It's not about erasing it. It's about figuring out how to take those good parts and
integrate them.
Integrate them. You used that word earlier, and I think it's perfect.
It's about finding that balance between, that need for order, tradition, structure, but also that drive to think for yourself, Like we need both. Exactly. It's a dance. Yeah. And I'm starting to see this whole diplomat thing less as like, oh, you're this way, and more. Yeah. Like when we all go through it, it's a phase. It's a phase, and it's about learning what it can teach us. Absolutely. So how do we honor that need to belong? That's the big question. Because we all have it. We all want to belong. But also find our own voice. Exactly. It's not one or the other. And that's tough. It is, but you're not alone in it. Right. And I think that's maybe the biggest takeaway. We're all figuring this out together. We are. This whole deep dive, all this reading, it's like...
The Diplomat, they have a hard time picturing
a different way.
A different way of life.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And so here's a challenge, and I'm putting it out there for myself too.
Okay, I'm listening.
Talk to someone. Really talk with beliefs completely different than yours.
Oh,
listen, really, listen. With an open mind.
Open heart.
Yeah, because who knows?
I might learn something.
We might learn a lot about them, about ourselves.
About the world.
And maybe, just maybe, find a little more peace with this whole human experience thing.
Couldn't hurt, right?
Not at all.